I paused at the edge of the chaos and smiled for what felt like the first time in over 2 years. Around me, people hurried past, eager to get to their event or grab some limited edition item. A pair of Batmen strolled by holding hands. An overweight man pulled a trolley behind him stacked with comics to be signed. A group of teenage girls dressed as anime characters I couldn't identify giggled and posed for what was probably the first of 1,000 photos taken of them over the weekend. Banners promoting cosmic events featuring women in serious and seriously uncomfortable poses hung from the rafters. It was early, and already the noise level was approaching uncomfortable. Perfect. Comic-Con. Man, I'd missed it. I almost hadn't made it to this one. The amount of negotiating, well-meaning, "Are you sure?" and offers to tag along with me just to keep you company were kind but frustrating. I understood their concern, honestly I did. And part of me was deeply touched that my friends and family, who had kept me grounded after Beth and the accident, were still worried about me after 2 years. But a man can't stay sheltered forever. I was approaching 50 and was determined I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life stuck in one moment. I had to live again. I had to remember how to be happy. Family and friends didn't understand, of course, but there were few places on earth that made me as happy as wandering around a convention room filled with tens of thousands of mildly eccentric geeks. That many people, also excited to dive into something they loved. It was like a giant positive energy source. Positive energy I was more than willing to absorb. I could feel the muscles in my face ache slightly. Unused to their current expression, they'd adjust. Tightening the straps on my backpack, I put the cane forward and slowly started walking through the con. It was a different pace for me. At previous cons, I was going full speed almost all the time, convinced I was missing something exciting. Some signing, some exclusive item, a cool panel, or some hotshot artist who was only taking commissions from the first 5 people to reach his table. The walking stick and the knee brace made sure that wasn't happening this time. People rushed past me, some offering a quick apology if they bumped into me. It was my new reality and I had to adjust. This time I had to be satisfied with wandering down the aisles, passing booths and tables and just soaking it all in. I needed my joy back, not a pile of stuff. But it was still a Comic-Con. Comic-Cons are, by design, meant to drain your wallet. The only people who didn't spend much were those who didn't have any. And even they sometimes found themselves at event ATMs paying ridiculous fees just to take out enough cash to buy that thing they wanted. Comic-Cons had a way of warping reality. Every decision made inside the con seemed perfectly reasonable. It was only after you left the building and walked a few blocks that you could look at what you bought and wonder, what on earth was I thinking? 5 hours in, and so far I'd managed to avoid any wildly unnecessary purchases. A few new graphic novels signed by the creators, a fun t-shirt. The page of original art was a bit of a splurge, but I'd always liked that artist, and I highly doubted it was the last page I'd be buying before the weekend was over. Still, I was feeling good. I knew my friends were worried I might come here, get overwhelmed, and make a series of bad choices. I was getting texts asking how things were going, which I replied to with happy emojis just to ease their minds. But so far it was nice to prove them wrong about any impending disasters. That's when the witch collided with me, sending me crashing onto the floor. I loved cosplayers, I really did. Anyone willing to spend weeks and hundreds, even thousands of dollars on a costume just so they could dress up as Boba Fett, or Elvis as a stormtrooper or Spider-Man. I admired them. Honestly, I did. It wasn't my thing, but they were entertaining and mostly harmless. Mostly. An occupational hazard with cosplayers is that they were often oblivious to their surroundings. The older ones eventually developed some sort of radar sense, but the younger ones were usually too excited just to be at the con, happy to be with their friends and, well, broke from spending all their money on the costume. Their main joy came from hanging out and posing for pictures with anyone who asked. This one was so eager to do a dramatic Scarlet Witch hex pose that she didn't notice I was walking right behind her. Bam. Down I went. If my knee hadn't been messed up, I probably could have stayed on my feet. If it wasn't already aching after pushing it too hard and spending hours walking on concrete floors, it probably wouldn't have hurt as much when I hit the ground. Since my knee was sore and stiff when I landed awkwardly, I couldn't help but yell out, "Ow, no." "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," I heard. Then there were bursts of laughter. "Ashley, seriously, why are you always such a klutz? You almost flattened that poor guy." It turns out that 5 hours at a Comic-Con wasn't quite enough to suppress 2 years of pent-up frustration and sadness. I was just about ready to lose it, rip into this careless girl and her friends, and maybe even do something that would get me thrown out of the con or worse. I looked up and there was just... I still don't have the words. It was like all the pent-up frustration just disappeared. She was adorable. Not in some overly glamorous way or anything like that. She just made you immediately want to scoop her up and protect her. Big, luminous green eyes, pouty lips, and a mass of red hair barely held in place by the headpiece she wore. She had a face that made it almost impossible to stay angry, and she was young enough that she didn't realize she had this particular superpower, or how she could use it for mischief if she wanted. She also looked like she weighed about 100 pounds soaking wet and stood maybe 5 feet tall, more like a pixie than anything else. Normally, I suspect she would have just bounced off me, but she must have hit me at the perfect angle and had some momentum on her side. She also looked absolutely horrified. "Oh my God," she exclaimed. "I'm so sorry. I'm such an idiot. I was posing for a picture and I don't have my glasses on because they clash with the costume, and I didn't see you there. And oh no, are you okay?" I was sprawled on the floor and my knee was throbbing like mad, but somehow I found it in me to laugh a little. "I think I'll survive," I said, using my cane to help myself up. The girl grabbed my arm, trying to help me to my feet, but as soon as my knee twinged, I lost my balance, and since I was easily twice her weight, she didn't have the strength to keep me up, which meant she lost her balance too. I ended up back on the floor, with 100 pounds of adorable redhead on top of me. And now, we were in a sitcom. I could hear people laughing around us. She pushed herself up on her hands just enough to look down at me, absolutely mortified. "Hi there," I managed to say. "You okay?" "Oh my God," she yelled, jumping to her feet so quickly I briefly wondered if she might actually have superpowers. "Ashley, you're such a clumsy idiot," said a girl nearby, probably one of her friends. Before I could say anything, a dark figure loomed over me. "Need a hand up?" asked Darth Vader. Perfect. I grabbed his hand and he easily helped me to my feet. He stood well over 6 feet tall, and I had a feeling it was mostly him, not just the costume. "Thanks, Lord Vader," I managed to say. "Don't mention it," he rasped. "Literally, bad for the image." I surprised myself by laughing again. A minute ago I'd been ready to lose it. Now I was chuckling. I looked around for Ashley? She stood a few feet away, still looking completely embarrassed. Her 2 friends were still laughing at her. "Honestly, Ashley, that was hilarious. I just wish I'd been filming. That would have been an awesome TikTok. You're such an awkward mess." The friend dressed as Rogue finally noticed me. She took a step back and, not so subtly, slipped out her phone, probably thinking she was about to capture my meltdown. "You okay?" I asked. Ashley looked dumbfounded. "Am I okay? I just ran into you and then fell on top of you. I almost squashed you." A brief flash of the accident flickered in my mind, but I pushed it away. "I've been almost killed by heavier things than you. I'm fine. On the other hand, I'm more concerned you might die of embarrassment." "It's okay," I said. I wanted to give her a reassuring pat, but as a fully clothed middle-aged man with a foot of height over her, and she being maybe 18, dressed in a red swimsuit, stockings, thigh-high boots, and a cape, discretion got the better of me. Sensing there would be no blowout, Rogue turned her phone off in frustration. "She's always such a ditz. I don't even know what to do with her," she said. "Perhaps try being kinder and a better friend," I suggested, fully aware of how that would land. "What the hell do you know?" snapped the other friend, dressed as an anime character I couldn't place. That's when I realized that getting into a spat with teenagers at a Comic-Con was something I absolutely did not need. Ignoring them, I turned back to Ashley. "I'm fine, I promise. Don't spend the rest of the con beating yourself up about this, okay?" She nodded. "But maybe wear your glasses even if they clash with the costume." "Okay," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips, and that was enough drama for me. Thankfully, there was a panel room nearby where a session was about to start in a few minutes. I had no real interest in the history of Archie comics, but it offered a chance to sit down, rest my knee, and avoid further chaos. I hobbled towards the room, feeling the burning stares of 2 teenage drama queens drilling into the back of my head. I felt worse. After the Archie panel, there was another session about how to become a writer for geek publications, which mostly revolved around why it's a terrible idea if you enjoy things like food and shelter. I felt kind of bad for the eager young hopefuls who kept asking questions like, "No, there has to be a loophole somewhere. There wasn't. By the time it ended, my knee felt good enough to make the walk back to the hotel. Typical con day. I'd forgotten to eat lunch, so I figured I'd order some room service, followed by painkillers and maybe a soak in the hotel's jacuzzi. The panel was the last event of the day, so the con was winding down, with crowds of people streaming toward the exits. For some, it was their only day. For others, like me, it was just the start of a multi-day geek marathon. I joined the flow of people and made my way down to street level. From there, it was a short walk to my hotel. That's when I heard a voice call out behind me, "Hey there!" I turned around and saw my witch. She had a puffy coat over her costume, but it was still fall, and she was still in a modified one-piece swimsuit. She looked cold and embarrassed. "Ashley, you're freezing. Why are you out here?" She looked confused for a moment. "Did I tell you my name?" "Your friends said it when they were giving you a hard time." She blushed even deeper. "Oh yeah, right," she said. "Look, I just really wanted to apologize, but properly this time. I know I was babbling earlier, and I was just mortified by what happened. My brain kind of shut down." "Are you okay?" That she managed to ask this while her teeth were chattering was kind of impressive. "I'm fine, but I'm going to have to take you to the hospital for hypothermia. How long have you been out here waiting to apologize?" She glanced down at her shoes. "I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. Heather and Leslie said I was being ridiculous and left to get ready for an after-con party they were invited to. But I just felt really bad. And you handled everything so well, even after they were so rude to you. I hate it when people think poorly of me and—" I raised my hand and she paused. "I tend to ramble sometimes," she admitted. I couldn't help but laugh. "That's okay, it's kinda charming." Now I was sounding like the creepy old guy to the nice girl trying to apologize. Fortunately, she didn't seem to mind. She just smiled and then shivered again. "Anyway, sorry," she said, laughing. "I should run back inside, change, and find the girls." She bent down to grab the backpack at her feet. I glanced back at the convention center and noticed a couple trying to get in. Security wasn't letting them, despite their pleading. I nodded in that direction, and Ashley looked, letting out a moan. "Oh no, I really don't want to have to go all the way to Queens to change at the hotel and then come back to Manhattan." I had just been mildly creepy but decided to take a chance. "Look, my hotel is just a block away. There's a restroom in the lounge area. Just pretend you're my daughter or something and go in there to change. That way, you won't be freezing your butt off on the subway to Queens and dealing with any potential crazies." She brightened up instead of being grossed out. "Really? You don't mind? That'd be fantastic. You stayed out here to freeze and apologize instead of going to party with your friends. It's the least I could do. Come on," I said, hobbling toward the hotel. She slipped her arm through mine and nestled in a bit closer. I glanced down at her. "I'm freezing and you're warm. Come on, Dad, let's get you to the hotel." There was minimal hassle at the hotel, and after hearing her stomach growl as we walked past the lounge, I managed to convince her to have some food with me. "I'm the one who knocked you over. You shouldn't be buying me food," she protested, though it lacked conviction. "You can't go out drinking with your friends on an empty stomach like that. You'll be tipsy after 2 sips. She giggled. "I'm a lightweight at the best of times, but I'm 19. They won't let me drink here, but I'm too hungry to argue, so thank you." We settled on burgers and she went to change. I found a spot in the lounge near a fake fireplace that radiated some extra warmth. It was a toss-up, which would arrive first, the food or Ashley. As it turned out, it was a tie. Just as the food was being placed on the table, she emerged from the bathroom. Transforming from the Scarlet Witch to a petite redhead in yoga pants and a cardigan evidently took some time. I noticed she had fixed her hair into a ponytail that fell halfway down her back, washed her face, and applied more subtle makeup. With amusement, I spotted that she'd put on a pair of glasses. She plopped down in the chair across from me, taking a moment to enjoy the heat while eyeing the hamburger hungrily. "I'm going to thank you now because I might not say much for the next few minutes. I haven't eaten anything except granola bars around noon," she said, reaching for the burger. "I won't take it personally. Go ahead." I found there are 3 kinds of thin people. The first are those who are regimented about their weight, counting every calorie and following precise exercise routines to maintain a specific weight range. The second are simply picky eaters who don't seem to have much interest in food. And finally, there are those with freakish metabolisms that can process the most unhealthy foods without gaining a single ounce. Judging by the way Ashley messily demolished the burger, I suspected she belonged to the second category. In less than 5 minutes, the burger and fries were gone, and she was eyeing my plate with a look that clearly indicated she was wondering if it would be rude to steal some fries. I tilted my plate slightly to signal that I was willing to share, and she quickly grabbed one, dipping it in ketchup. Let me guess, you blew all your money on your costumes traveling here in the Con Pass. You're sharing a room with your friends and forgot to budget for food this weekend, I said. How do you know? Hardcore cosplayers tend to frown upon any spending that doesn't go toward fabric and props, am I right? She nodded. I have madness. My mom and people in my high school thought I was a nut. Thank goodness for the internet, where I can connect with other enthusiasts who share my obsession. Is that where you met? Heather and Leslie, yeah, she replied, making a face. We met online, and then we all ended up at the same university, so we've been hanging out for a few weeks now. I'm not sure I like them, but, well, I'm kind of stuck with them for the weekend. I knew for a fact that I didn't like them either. Sure, you can tease your friends when they do something silly or make a mistake. I did it to my friends all the time, just as they did to me. But those two seemed less inclined to engage in some good-natured ribbing and more focused on putting Ashley down to elevate themselves. I recognized that type from my time at university and had no patience for them then either. So what's your addiction, Dad? I looked startled, and it was my turn to blush a bit. I don't think there's any concern they're going to ask you to leave, so you don't need to call me that now. Oh, I know, but you haven't actually, told me your title. You're just the guy I nearly knocked over. I shook my head. Honestly, I actually hadn't told her my name. Apparently, the forgetfulness must be kicking in. My name is... She reached over across the table and put a finger on my mouth. It was warm, and I could vaguely taste salt and mustard on it. Nope, you're my dad now. You've missed your chance to tell me your real name. If we're still talking at the end of this con, you can tell me your real name. For now, it's Dad. This was the moment I was grateful for the table, which was covering my quickly growing interest. Daddy-daughter play was always one of those unrealized fantasies for me. My wife was never interested and considered it unusual. And now I had a cute 19-year-old red-headed geek calling me Dad with a cheeky smile on her face. This was going to be an intriguing and possibly really awkward weekend. I've learned to pick my battles carefully with redheads, I said, shrugging my shoulders in surrender. Good choice, Dad, she said, so what's your vice? Comic book wise, of course. Oh yes, she was going to be an amusing challenge this weekend. The next hour was spent debating the merits of different characters in comic books. She lit up when I said I adored Batgirl, but frowned when I said I preferred Cassandra Cain over Barbara Gordon. She felt compelled to defend the redhead sisterhood at length. I honestly couldn't remember the last time I laughed and relaxed quite so much. I was a bit sad when her phone buzzed and she looked at it and frowned. They're wondering if I'm alive. I should probably get moving. There's a gathering at some bar I'm missing, she said, reaching to put on her jacket. I'd honestly prefer to stay. This has been enjoyable. Likewise, it's been a challenging couple of years, so this has been quite pleasant. She looked at me with a tilt of her head like she wanted to ask more, but decided it wasn't the moment. Big plans for the rest of your night? Dad's an old guy, I said. I think I'm going to soak in the hot tub for an hour and then head to bed. See, now I'm really regretting leaving, Ashley said. She managed to say it in a tone balancing the fine line of making me wonder if she was serious or just joking. It was an impressive skill set for her age, or maybe they all had it and I just wasn't used to paying attention. I'm sure you'll have plenty of fun, I said, and then I had a forget-it moment. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my device. I pulled up my number and showed it to her. Do me a favor and text me when you get back to your place safely. Us dads worry about our girls out in the big city. She grinned and took a quick picture of the number, checking to make sure she could see it. Then she pocketed her phone and threw her bag over her shoulder. Then, on impulse, she bent down and kissed me on the cheek. You know you just blew your chance to get rid of me for the con. You could have hidden from the rambling, clumsy redhead, but now you have to deal with me all weekend. I'll handle it. I'm looking forward to finding out, she said, and then headed out of the lounge. Just before she left, she paused, looked back at me with a smile, and then called out loud enough for most customers to hear. Thanks for dinner, Daddy. See you later. Then she was gone. A few customers gave me a glance. I ignored them, left money for the meal, stood up, and went to my room to change for the jacuzzi, wondering what exactly I had gotten myself into. I slept like the dead, waking up only briefly around 1:30 when my phone pinged. It was a text. "Safe and sound back at the hotel, Dad." And then there was a photo of her lying in bed. It looked fairly modest. She was wearing a nightshirt with Batgirl on it, and her makeup had been all removed. Didn't make her any less adorable, though. "Good girl," I texted back. "I'll see you tomorrow." I then fell back asleep. It was only after I woke up 7 hours later that it occurred to me she might have wanted to chat more or something. Then again, that had a slight creepy vibe I couldn't shake off, so I was glad I didn't. A quick shower, a survey of which geek t-shirt to wear that day. I opted for a Batgirl shirt from the animated series, and a restocking of critical supplies, a bottle of water, granola, bars, and some trail mix. I rechecked my wallet to see if I needed to grab some from the room safe. The damage from day one wasn't too bad, but some extra money wouldn't hurt. I glanced at the pill bottle holding the antidepressants. I was feeling good. I briefly entertained the idea of not taking them, but then remembered that being in the middle of a giant Comic-Con would be a hell of a place to suddenly get really depressed. I took the pill. I picked up my phone off the charger and debated texting Ashley. Suddenly I was 15, and wondering if I should ask the cute girl in my class out for a date. Those things rarely worked out for me back then. To hell with it, I thought. "See you at the con. Looking forward to your cosplay." Harmless, not creepy. I hobbled over to my cane, grabbed it, and headed out the door. I'd been at the con for a little over an hour and was absolutely not checking my phone every 5 minutes for a text when there finally was one. Finally got in. The line was crazy and my roommate slept in. "Where are you?" "Artist Alley," I replied. "Cool. I'm stuck with them for an hour or so. I'll come find you. Let me know if you leave that area." No prob. Walking around Artist Alley at a con was the easiest thing in the world for me. Put me in a room filled with artists selling books, prints, and artwork, and I was in my version of heaven. The only challenge was not spending all the money. I was enjoying myself. I was chatting with an artist about his latest book and eyeing some of the pages he had for sale. That explains why I didn't see her coming up behind me. It was only when the artist looked away from me and said, "That is an awesome Batgirl," that I turned around. There are all kinds of Batgirls. You could go old school gray and yellow from the 70s and 80s. You could do the armored costume, the one from the animated series, the hipster Burnside costume. Ashley decided they were all too conservative and went for the bombshell version, which is to say, yellow knee-high Doc Marten, purple parachute pants, a utility belt, a purple corset which pushed up her breasts, giving her some modest cleavage while leaving her midriff. Bear, a yellow and purple cape and a purple aviator cap with goggles. Her red hair was pulled into a ponytail out the back of the cap. Fortunately, the artist I was speaking to couldn't see my face as my jaw dropped. She was a bombshell and she knew it. I found myself at a loss for words. Ashley beamed at my reaction but decided to not out me to everyone as the lecherous pervert that I feared I was. "Hey, Dad, there you are. Spend all our money yet?" I managed to compose myself before speaking. "Not yet," I said. "Have you been fighting off the boys all morning?" "Only a few and a couple of girls, but I've been behaving." Yes, she was going to be the death of me. The artist I'd been speaking to asked if he could get a picture with her. She agreed. I'm not sure he believed I was her father, but he wasn't taking any chances and kept his hands visible the whole time. We walked off down the crowded aisle, and she looped her arm in with mine and began giggling. "I thought you were going to have a stroke." "I'm not sure I'm entirely out of the woods. You look incredible." She smiled. "Thanks, Dad. I thought you would like it." We strolled around Artist Alley, chatting about the different things on tables, and frequently pausing so Ashley could pose for a photo. It was a good time, but my knee needed a break, and I could use a bite to eat. Finding a place to sit was going to be impossible, so I navigated towards the back wall of the convention center. There were plenty of others with the same idea, either taking a break, having a snack, or checking their phones, but I managed to find a spot and eased myself down to the floor. I stretched my bad leg out and gently massaged it. Ashley looked worried and hunched down next to me. "Are you okay, Dad?" I was never not going to get a thrill hearing her say that, I decided. "I'm fine. I'm just an old man and I need a break and some food." You can run along if you want and hang out with your friends." She pouted. "Trying to get rid of me? No chance," she said, and collapsed into an inelegant pile down on the floor next to me. She then reached into her utility belt and pulled out some granola bars and water. "Clever," I said admiringly. "I've got my moments," she said. We ate our snacks and she rested her head on my shoulder. It was a nice moment, which is when my brain decided it would be a good time to try and ruin things. "I don't understand," I said, staring off at the crowd. "You're beautiful, smart, funny, and geeky as hell. You are a dream girl for a lot of people here. I'm the very definition of an average middle-aged guy. Why are you spending your time with me?" She lifted her head off my shoulder, looked at me a moment, weighed her options, and decided to punch me in the shoulder. Then she tucked her arm into mine and put her head back on my shoulder. "Thank God I don't like you for your brains," she said. "I mean, cute, geeky, and kind are good enough for me. Brains would be nice, but I guess a girl can't have everything." I was not cute. I probably had never been cute. My hair was almost completely gray, and I'm sure the beard was not helping much. However, I was in surprisingly decent shape. Turns out the 2-year-long horror show I went through was good for weight loss. Plus, the last 6 months I had started working out as a way to keep me distracted. Still, I was not any 19-year-old girl's definition of cute, maybe distinguished on a good day. I took a breath to respond when she held up a finger, as if to shush me. I paused. She took a deep breath, but didn't look at me when she spoke. "So, secret origin time. I'll be wanting yours later, by the way, but for now we'll do mine. When I was 11, my dad left home, just abandoned Mom and I, which you would think would make me hate him, but I was a good and proper daddy's girl at this point. So when he got up and left because he got tired of fighting with Mom over his drinking, naturally I blamed Mom. And being a redhead, it means I was particularly stubborn and vicious about it. God, the fights Mom and I had," she said, shaking her head. "Huh?" It also meant when I was old enough for the hormones to kick into full gear, I was hell on wheels. From 12 to 17, I made a lot of really questionable choices. I was a little too much like my father's daughter when it came to drinking, which is why I don't do it anymore. I partied a lot, and I discovered I had a type. I liked older men. "You went looking for a daddy," I said. She nodded. "The problem being when you're a needy wild child with daddy issues, you're going to find men who will absolutely take advantage of that situation. And I was." She paused for a moment. I was beginning to feel like shit poking at her like this. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pried like that. I know that must have been hard." She stopped leaning against my shoulder and sat back up on the wall, staring off at the crowd. "Yeah, it was, but I read something once. We learn by doing. Simple, but I like it. And you know, I learned some hard lessons, but I got through it. And it gave me one hell of an abusive jerk radar, which also has its downsides. I tried to give up older guys. You know, find a nice guy closer to my own age. Maybe stop chasing after daddy figures. But when you try to date 18 to 24-year-old guys, your jerk radar is going off all the time, or they're so immature that I have no patience with them. It's been a pretty frustrating few years dating-wise, but I came here to relax, have some fun with my friends, and, you know, maybe try and find a guy my age that isn't by some miracle a complete idiot. But then I literally ran into you. You do pack quite a punch for such a little package." "Jerk," she said, blushing a bit. "But my jerk radar didn't go off with you. You could have been furious with me and you weren't. When I was weird and stalked you outside the con, you were more concerned about feeding me and making sure I was warm. I texted you in the middle of the night, and you were just happy I was home safe and didn't try to write something intimate to me. And I know you like me. I know you do. I can see it when you look at me. But you're concerned about coming across as a lecherous old man and taking advantage of me." "Wow," I said. "Are you studying psychology?" "Design, actually," she said. "I'm just good at reading people and knowing what they want." "You're very good at it," I said. "So you do like me, Daddy?" she said. "Daddy, not Dad, whole other thing, wow." "I do," I said, surprising myself a bit with admission. "But I'm carrying some damage of my own in my secret origin." She nodded, sliding up the wall, rubbing her butt to get rid of numbness. I leveraged my cane to help push me up the wall. She took my hand and leaned up to give me a kiss on the cheek. "I know, Daddy. And when you're ready, I want to hear it, but just so you know, I'm okay with this and seeing where it goes. You're not taking advantage of me. To answer your earlier question, I like you because you're kind, and I think I can trust you. And I have a daddy-daughter kink that doesn't seem like it's going away. And I hope I can help you relax and play with me because I think we could have some real fun." Her phone chose that moment to be annoying and interrupt the moment. She grabbed it in reflex, looked down at it and rolled her eyes. "My presence is demanded. There's a photo shoot taking place and I'm late." "I have to run," she said. Then she looked back up at me. "Are we okay?" "You've helped reassure your old man he's not a lecherous pervert." "Oh God, I hope he's still a bit of a pervert," she said, taking a quick glance around. Then she leaned up and kissed me quickly on the lips. "I'll touch base later, Daddy," she said, dashing off into the crowd, a purple and yellow cape flapping behind her. I was in a surprisingly decent mood as I hobbled through the madness of the Friday crowds at the con. I could only imagine what Saturday was going to look like. I'd need to replace my cane with a machete to make any progress anywhere. But the crowds weren't frustrating to me. I was just basking in the glow. I felt like a teenager, which was weirdly exhilarating. She likes me, I thought. I was already doing some quick research on daddy little girl play on my phone, because I understood the theory of it, but I suspected she had a bit more practical experience with it. But that was fine. I think it was going to be a fun thing to learn and experiment with. There was also the matter of, where she lived compared to where I lived. It was a sure bet we were both from out of town, but with my luck, she lived on the other side of the country. Deep breath. One worry at a time, old man. Just enjoy that something is happening you never thought would happen again. You found someone who likes you. That alone was enough to put a slightly dopey grin on my face, but by 4:30 I hadn't heard from her. Trying to accidentally run into someone at a Comic-Con of this size is ludicrous. But I spent 45 minutes fighting the crowds to reach one of the areas where cosplayers hang out to see if I could spot her. If not, then I could always text. But she wasn't there, although I could see her two friends dressed as Supergirl and Wonder Woman, holding court. No sign of my Batgirl, though. I was beginning to get worried when I spotted a flash of purple and yellow down a side hallway, where there were rooms to get into panels. She was sitting on the floor, with her head on her knees, looking upset and miserable. I got next to her and slid down the side of the wall. That's when she finally noticed me. "Ashley, what?" She threw her arms around me and began sniffling, trying not to cry, and not completely succeeding. The smart, composed woman from a few hours earlier was absent. I put my arms around her and gave her a hug. "It's okay, Ashley, what's the matter?" She sniffed and wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I didn't want to bother you. Teenage girl stuff." I appreciated being kept out of it. I had limited experience with teenage girl drama warfare, but I knew I would be way over my head. "You're never a bother. What happened?" From that simple question came a torrent of anger, upset, drama, and frustration. Heather and Leslie had been upset with her being late for the photo shoot because she had been with me. They then proceeded to give her a hard time for chasing after an old man. She fired back a few remarks about them chasing after whatever boy paid the slightest bit of attention to them, which is when they told her they had company coming back to their room after a party tonight and they didn't care much for weird girls, so maybe she ought to find another place to spend the night. She'd said fine and stomped off. She'd then realized she had no place to stay tonight, or perhaps the rest of the con, and she didn't want to impose on me because she knew I was still nervous and thinking I was taking advantage of her, which clearly she had no problem with us being together. This all came out in about 20 seconds. I was honestly trying not to laugh because, God, the drama. So I did something rash, especially given where we were. I reached down, put my finger on her lips, and then leaned in and kissed her. God, she was nice to kiss. Soft lips, some kind of flavored gloss which had miraculously remained on all day. Her eyes went wide for a second, then she threw her arms around me and kissed me back. It lasted about 15 seconds until I heard some people gently laughing at us. I pulled back. She looked at me, slightly glazed. "Get your stuff and stay with me at the hotel. Crisis averted." "Really?" she said, looking amazed. "Really," I said. And then added, "There is absolutely no expectation of anything happening. I'll talk to the concierge and have a cot brought up to the room. I'll feel better knowing you're safe and sound rather than sleeping on a subway platform." She hugged me again, harder this time. "Thank you. You're the best, Daddy." While being gently crushed by my pixie, I managed to fumble out my wallet out of my back pocket. reached in and handed her a few $20 bills. She looked confused. "I don't want you dragging your luggage across the city. It's a surefire way to have more drama happen to your day. There's not that much time left before the doors close. Go get changed now, and head back to your room and grab your stuff before the drama queens arrive. Then grab a cab and come back to the hotel. Text me when you get the cab and when you're arriving," I said. She nodded and took the money slowly from my hands. Then she headed towards the coat check-in area to get her stuff, disappearing into the hordes. A few minutes later, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a text from her. "You really don't need to get the cot from the concierge, Daddy. I'm pretty small and don't take up much room in a bed." Christ almighty. Before I came to this con, my friends and family were concerned I might do something crazy. I thought they were afraid I'd spend all my money or get into a random fight. During the past 2 years, I had flashes of irrational behavior, seething rage that could be triggered with the slightest insult. I wasn't reckless with money. It's not like I was buying stupid sports cars. But I didn't care so much about money. I'd worked hard and saved and still lost the most precious thing in the world to me. Money couldn't get it back, so why did it matter? I'd gotten better the last 6 months. Medication helped. Finally, talking to professionals and listening to what they had to say rather than just blowing them off was working. The whole reason I was at this con was that everyone believed it was safe for me to go and do something by myself. I would have picked a beach and gone swimming in the ocean. Leave it to you to go someplace chilly and swarming with people who have dubious hygiene habits, my mom said to me. She questioned if it was a rational decision. I insisted it was. It occurred to me as I headed back to the hotel that hooking up with a 19-year-old with a daddy fetish in a drama field probably also qualified as not a completely sane decision. I did not care. The last 2 years had been painful and heartbreak, and now I had Ashley, who at least wanted to make me happy right now. I'd figure out the rest later. I got back to my room and tidied the place up a bit. I had clothes, books, and Comic Con swag tossed all over the room. It wasn't long before I got the first text telling me she was in a taxi. 20 minutes later, there was another text telling me she was pulling up to the hotel. I gave her my room number. And then there was a tentative knock at the room door. I opened it, and there was a pile of bags with a tiny redhead in the middle. Cosplayers don't travel light, but Ashley dragging around a piece of luggage on wheels, a hiking-style backpack with a smaller school-sized one in her arm. It's a miracle she managed to get here in a taxi. I could only imagine what it would have been like wrestling all this stuff onto the subway. "Jesus, Ashley," I said, grabbing her luggage and small backpack and bringing into the room. "Did you fly here carrying all this?" "Bus, actually," she said. "They're a little bit more flexible about how much you can carry on board." She walked into the room, shrugging her shoulders, and let the large backpack drop to the floor. She then looked around the room. It was a fairly standard hotel room. King-sized bed, a large TV above the dresser, a small desk if you wanted to do some work, and a couple of comfy chairs positioned by the window. The bathroom had a solid shower and bath. The hotel was less than 5 years old, so the usual wear and tear hadn't settled in yet. I indulged in a room on one of the higher floors, giving me a good view of the city. God, this place is amazing. The place we were staying in was such a dump. 2 twin beds, worn carpet, and the walls were so thin I could hear the guy in the room next door fart, she said. She walked over to the bed and flopped on it and made a low, pleasant groaning noise. "You are the best daddy," she said with her eyes closed, enjoying the moment. She was much happier than she had been less than 2 hours ago. Of course, now that I had her here, I wasn't entirely sure what to do next. She sat up on the bed and looked at me with a grin. "Daddy?" she said in a little sing-song voice. "Did you say this place has a pool?" Which is how we ended up near the top of the hotel, where they kept the pool and jacuzzi. It was a Friday night, and most people were out on the town, so the pool and jacuzzi were mostly empty. Turns out Ashley's Scarlet Witch costume from the day before could also double nicely as a one-piece swimsuit. I was content to sit in the jacuzzi and press hot jets against my knee and watch her do laps. She'd clearly been on a swim team or something. Her form was flawless. Eventually, she came over to where I was. She took off her swim cap and quickly worked some magic involving elastics so that her hair was piled on top of her head and slid into the jacuzzi with a small groan of pleasure. Surprisingly, she didn't cuddle up next to me, but sat across from me. She wanted me to look at her in her swimsuit. Somehow, there was more cleavage showing now that she was in the jacuzzi. "You're a good swimmer," I said, Swim team in high school? She nodded, sinking down lower into the jacuzzi. It was now just the tops of her breasts and face above water. Her toes came to the surface, just out of my reach. A look of relaxing bliss crossed her face. I was good and I loved it, but genetics made me a tiny thing. I could never compete against the tall ones with the huge wingspans. Gymnastics? She scrunched up her face. Every gymnast and ballerina I've ever met are seriously messed up people. Teenage girls have enough body issues without getting into those things. She splashed her toes in the water a bit and sank further into the jacuzzi. Her feet came within reach, and I gently grabbed one and started to massage it. She let out a surprised moan. "Oh, such a good daddy," she said. "I love those yellow Doc Martens, but wearing those for 10 hours at a Comic-Con, plus the heels yesterday, my feet are killing me. These are good brownie points you have building up here."